Again, thanks everyone for coming. I just want to amplify the sort of thanks to the Architecture League for its kind of consistent support over the last 6 years. Rosalie Ginevra, the executive director, very early on, was unflinchingly supportive in the face of all sorts of questions. What does this have to do with architecture in the first place? And Greg Wessner being persistent and patient and continuously a pleasure to work with. I also want to thank Trebor and Omar, my colleagues, who in developing this idea 6 years ago, I think framed this in ways which I think none of us could initially by ourselves, and I know I've learned a lot over the course of the project. And of course, most importantly, all of the contributors to the project, which are number over 60 in terms of the initial symposium, the pamphlet series, the exhibition, and the book, many of whom are also in the room. So there will be, I think, a reception afterwards between 5 and 6 out in the lobby, I'm assuming. So it would be great if you can join us for that and meet some of the people who are involved, who, without which this wouldn't be a project in the first place. Okay, so if between Helen and Kazis and Trebor, we were talking about privacy and some of the kind of implications that certain technological transformations have for conditions of privacy. This next session is going to focus on questions of publicity. So specifically, how we look at questions of how public space, public realm, and the public domain has transformed in the context of what might be described as a whole host of technologies such as mobile, pervasive, embedded media communications and information systems. In the context of an age of big data, it's critical to look both beneath and beyond the systems, practices, and policies that support it. So in terms of beneath, where does this data come from? How is it sampled, gathered, aggregated, processed, and analyzed? And how predictions are made from it? At the same time, looking beyond big data, where does this data come from in the first place? How is it sampled? How is it gathered, aggregated? Aggregated process. Who owns it? Who has access to it? How can it be shared? And how, opening up these processes to broader publics, we can work together toward a greater data literacy within the public at large. But also how these systems can be used in ways they weren't originally designed for. In one way, we can look at this in terms of this distinction between making data public, and as one of our panelists, Usman Haq, likes to say, public making data. So this session is going to focus primarily on distributed sensing initiatives and contrasting them with centralized programs managed by government agencies. I should say this is often characterized as a question of top-down versus bottom-up initiatives. And I want to, in a sense, put that into question and to suggest that, in fact, it's a matter of an emphasis or focus, that most of these projects are a little of both, right? Which is to say, this distinction between top-down and bottom-up does not necessarily always play itself out in neat and convenient packages. Having said that, we've got 3 panelists here. Usman Haq was a member of the initial, or a participant in the initial symposium. He was, can everyone hear me? It doesn't sound like this microphone. Yeah? He was a presenter at the initial symposium. He was talking about this project, crazy idea he had about called Environment XML. And he was discussing how he wanted to make sharing your data streams equivalent or similar to sharing photos on Flickr. This, of course, has evolved into a project and a platform known as Touchbay, and I think he'll be speaking a little bit about that today. Natalie Jeremijenko is also with us this afternoon. She also presenting at the initial symposium. And Natalie's work has been an inspiration to me throughout my interest, and in a sense initiated some of my interest in situated technologies in the first place. And so it's a pleasure to have been able to work with her over the last last 6 years in different capacities on this project. And finally, Laura Kurgan, also when we were doing architecture and situated technologies, Laura Kurgan was doing a project called Architecture and Justice, and her work with particularly the project $1 Million Blocks and analyzing data in terms of the Bronx, specifically in relationship to incarceration, was very much an important precedent for a lot of this work. Today she'll be talking, I think, a little bit about something else, but Laura is the co-director of the Spatial Information Design Lab at Columbia University, also a professor in the Department of Architecture there. Should say Usman is now from Patch Bay is now now he's a CEO of Connected Environments, and Patch Bay is now a full-fledged data brokerage platform which is in use. Nali Jeremijenko is the director of the Environmental Health Clinic at NYU. So without much further ado, I'd like to invite Usman up. Right.